case, this young man had the brass, if I can put it that way, to give an Old Testament Bible study to the most august Jewish council of the time, the Sanhedrin. And you'll find that in Acts chapter 7. And by the way, one of the fun things to do sometime is just study Acts 7 and make a list of the things that he reveals there you cannot find elsewhere in the Bible. There's 3 or 4 things that are startling that come out of his insights that are really quite fun. But I want to just take you to Acts chapter 7, verse 2 through 4. Visualize this young man, and he's reviewing the Old Testament in front of in this court hearing, in effect. And he said, "Men, brethren, and fathers, hearken. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia before he dwelt in Haran." Really? Mesopotamia, by the way, means between the rivers. That's what the word means. And it's that region between the Tigris and the Euphrates. It's a strip of land that we associate mostly with Iraq and up into Syria. And God said unto him, "Get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred, and come into the land which I will show thee." Then came he out of the land of the Chaldeans and dwelt in Haran, and from thence, when his father was dead, he removed him into this land wherein ye now dwell. And Stephen goes on to make his lecture, which goes on for quite a while. By the way, another little footnote for those of you that want an extra credit assignment. Take Stephen's address and outline it, and recognize he was interrupted. They didn't let him finish. From his outline, can you figure out what he was going, where he was headed, and what he was going to say before they interrupted him? I'll give you a clue, but you verify it through your own study. He goes through the history of Israel, how they always blew it the first time, but made it on the second. Blew it the first time, made it on the second. And they didn't recognize their Messiah on his first coming. And they get so upset, they take out and stone him, right? Where was he headed? They blew it in the first time, they'll get it on the second. And you can build that from Old Testament prophecy. But it's interesting, the young man apparently was heading in that direction before he got cut off. Anyway, he tells us some things here. He says that the God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia before he dwelt in Haran. And he was told to get out of the country, out of his kindred, and come into the land which God is going to show him. And he came out of the land of the Chaldeans, and he dwelt in Haran. Well, Haran is not in Canaan. So let's take a look at what this all means. See, he was before he dwelt in Haran. Now, understand, this is a map. You can see right about in the middle, I put Babylon, not because as a frame of reference for you from our previous studies, but a couple of 100 miles, about 100 miles or so to the southeast is a place called Ur. It's one of the oldest regions on the planet Earth from a civilized point of view, the Ur of the Chaldees. See, that's almost at the Persian Gulf. So it's maybe 100 miles from there. Haran, well, first of all, God told Abraham to get out of his country, away from his kindred, right? And God told him that when he was in Ur. What did Abraham do? He moved upriver. He moved up to Haran. Haran is north of Damascus. Nowhere near Canaan, by the way. And he's in Haran. When his father finally dies, then he picks up and does what God told him to do. So you could make a case. There's probably 5 years of time up there in Haran. And you could make a case. You say, gee, that wasn't a faith. He didn't really do what God told him to do at first. But, it's interesting. You can't find that in the text directly. Why? What does God promise you about your sins? They'll be remembered no more. And that may sound like double talk, but see, now we'll reread Genesis 12, verse 1. It says, "Now the Lord had said unto Abraham." See, back when they were down there, he was supposed to leave down there, I infer. Leave his father, leave his family. That's what God called him out of. He didn't do that. He just moved upriver with all of them for about 5 years till his father died. Now, there may have been some extenuating circumstances. Maybe there was illness. Who knows? But in any case, it wasn't until his father dies that he then obeys. And God credits his obedience, even though from our point of view it may have been a little dilatory. God had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country and from thy kindred and from thy father's house unto a land that I will show thee. And then God gives him these famous I wills. I will make of thee a great nation. I will bless thee, make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. By the way, it's astonishing to realize how the rise and fall of nations relate to the treatment of Israel. And there are some interesting books that have been written on that. It's absolutely amazing how that goes, and even in relatively modern times. It wasn't that long ago that they shepherded Jews into ghettos, put walls around them, and machine gunned anyone that was climbing over that wall. A few years later, there were walls around Berlin, and Germans were machine gunned for climbing over that wall, until Rudolf Hess, the last survivor of that leadership, died in Spandau prison. When he died, that wall came down. But you can go on. Some authors have treated this rather interesting. 7 I wills. God says, I will make of thee a great nation, the nation of Israel. And I will bless thee, and I will make thy name great. And thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families, not just Jews, all families of the earth be blessed. Every benefit you and I have in Jesus Christ derives from this covenant relationship, surprisingly enough. And the important issue is for us to realize that contract is still intact. And when we mess around in the Middle East, we inadvertently are poking our finger in the eye of God. God has put his name on that particular parcel of ground. He has a destiny for it. He has a plan for it. And we jeopardize ourselves by not recognizing that. The nations are going to be judged on this basis, according to Matthew 25, 31 through 46. The great white throne judgment. This Abrahamic covenant foresees the blessing of the family of the entire earth, and Paul develops that in Galatians chapter 3. And it is going to be a part of the aspects before the throne of God in Revelation 5. But let's move on. Verse 4. So Abraham departed as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. His nephew went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abraham took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And unto the land of Canaan they came. And now to give you a perspective, they're up in Haran. So now they're migrating downward, westerly direction into the land of Canaan. And I haven't bothered to get into the specifics of Canaan. We'll do that on a subsequent review. But Abraham passed through the land unto the place of Shechem, or Shechem is here, or Shechem, same place, unto the plain of Moreh. And the Canaanite was then in the land. We're going to talk a lot about him before it's over, the Canaanites in general. Most people who read their Bible do not really understand what the Canaanites were really all about. We'll come to that when we get there. The Lord appeared unto Abraham and said, Unto thy seed will I give this land, and there builded he an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. One of the things you can do in your notes is keep track of Abraham building altars. Every place he goes, not every place, but frequently he builds altars. And he's an example to all of us. If you'll excuse a pun, we all need altered lives. You see? And I mean in terms of places of worship. I will give him this land, and there build an altar unto the Lord who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed, going on still toward the south. And it's interesting, there were no altars in Ur or Haran. This is part of his trek. This is part of his calling. He didn't have altars before. He and Terah, by the way, and the whole family were idol-worshiping Gentiles. They were pagans. God called Abraham out of all of that. One of the symbols you're going to find here in Abram's life, but it's a very poignant symbol to really understand, that's a tent. The tent is, and you could just say, well, that's the cultural thing. No, the tent is a temporary residence. He's sojourning. He's not establishing a permanent place. His eye is on the city whose builder and maker is whom? God, exactly. And so the tent is his emblem. You and I are also called to be strangers and pilgrims on the earth. You have to do that before acceptable worship is possible. It's interesting when you study the book of Revelation, there are two kinds of people there. The saved, the saints, those, and the earth dwellers, those that dwell on the earth. And it doesn't mean just that they're physically there. They dwell on the earth. The earth's their home. That's where their commitments are. That's where their priorities are. That's where their heart is. That's what's implied by the whole thing. And so you want to be sensitive to that contrast, not only here in Genesis, but also in Revelation. Anyway, Abraham continues the journey to the south.